call is 30 minutes. I wouldn't want to extend it more than 30. But yeah, and it will be recorded.
That's good.
I don't think I have to press anything. No, I don't think.
I think we allow, maybe.
Yeah. And it will take until it's picking up probably. But yes, so it was a nice pre-chat. Thank you so much. I will obviously prepared for it, and I mentioned in the announcement that I know you, and I met you the first time 2017.
Okay.
When I've done my my course with you for neuroscience and neuromarketing, but obviously that was me meeting you, but you not meeting me, because it was an online course, self-learning online course. And but since then, since 2017, I was really into it, and it's like, gosh, there's so much. And I was in marketing, product marketing back then, launching products like this, actually collaboration products, from an IT telco point of view. And there were so many things I've definitely done wrong. Still probably things I could do better. And
always, if we're not making mistakes, then we're making all the wrong mistakes, I would say. So,
yeah, we all have to go through a learning curve ourselves. But I think it was back then, maybe, I'm not sure, because I heard it a few times now, and I've obviously seen your products. But I think it was back then that I've heard about the corner of death, which you bring up, and I literally didn't know about beforehand. And since then, I see advertisements and things like, that's not there, that's where you shouldn't put things. So, and I loved it. So yeah, but all of that. So I thought you delivered this course brilliantly. I was hooked back then. I like neuroscience and neuromarketing. I think there's so much to learn from. And I know you do much more, because also when I prepared, I've asked ChatGPT, like, what are the things I need to know about?
remember, it can hallucinate, right? So.
Oh, okay. Well, you see,
you can come up with things that are not true. So if it says that I was an aspiring jazz musician, that was actually true. Or there might be other things that might be hallucination.
No, I think it said one factor, 100. You published over 100 articles, or you have over 100 publications.
That might be true. Yeah, I haven't count. I don't have a count for it.
So that was one number that I remember, 100 publications, and that you have done work with the World Economic Forum.
A little bit, yes.
It came up in the achievements top highlights, and obviously that you're a founder of Neurons as a company, and that's how I interacted with you, because that was me following from the neuroscience course. So yeah, why don't you, instead of asking ChatGPT, why don't you introduce yourself? Which is
absolutely. Absolutely. So kind of I do have a very blended background, right? So that means that besides kind of growing up in Norway, hence my last name, I actually started in doing business and economics first, and I realized that was really killing me out of boredom, because I liked the human parts of it, so marketing, organizational theories. I realized that I wanted to work more with that than the business side of things. From what I thought initially, turns out that part of the business is becoming more and more important these days. So I started studying first philosophy and then psychology. Ended up doing, becoming a psychologist and certified psychologist in neuropsychology. And what that means is that I've been working many years as a clinician to help people with brain disorders, brain injuries, to try to understand what kind of challenges they have and how to, if possible, rehabilitate that. And then I turned to, I was way too kind of curious, so I wanted to continue doing research. And I did a PhD in neurobiology and neuroimaging. And what that means is that I've been using these kind of fancy big brain scanners, the MRIs and things like that, to image both the structure and the function of the brain. So these fancy blobs in the brain, and studying, for example, what happens when we become conscious of something, as opposed to just seeing something and don't really realize we've been exposed to something.
Mm-hmm.
And then after my PhD, I was invited to establish a multidisciplinary research collaboration between university, the hospital, and the Copenhagen Business School. And that eventually turned out to be what's called the Center for Decision Neuroscience, where we studied the brain basis of decision making. So what happens in the brain when we are making good decisions, bad decisions, consumer behavior decisions, managerial and leadership decisions, innovation decisions, and so on. So we studied kind of, it was more like, how do we make decisions, and for good and bad, and what happens in the brain when we do that. And in 2013, I was invited to kick off. I was approached by a big American company. I wanted to say, they understood that they needed neuroscience to understand how consumers responded, because they were doing a lot of innovation work. But they also realized they couldn't just ask people questions, because we're really poor at, predicting what we're going to do, and we're really bad at, being conscious about why we choose the way we choose and things like that. So, but they didn't trust existing companies, so they wanted to build a toolbox from scratch. And I accepted that challenge, and that became Neurons. They even named the company Neurons, so that was their contribution as well. And now that person is actually on the board of Neurons.
Nice.
So kind of coming full cycle now. So it's been kind of a really kind of mixed route of business, psychology, clinical work, management, leadership, and then all over to kind of consumer behavior. So I think today, if you look my name up, the vast majority of my work is about neuromarketing, consumer behavior.
Yep.
But I still do a lot of work in management, leadership, innovation, but also for societally beneficial things, such as kind of helping hospitals improve their transformation process, for example.
Great. And that's obviously, I guess that you're saying full cycle, and I love that, because we had the pre-chat just now where we also said, hey, let's just help people who start their journey at the moment, being a startup or being a young person, just with giving time back, or giving not unsolicited advice, but just let's not try reinvent the wheel, which may have been already created somewhere else, and we can just tap in and collaborate a bit better. And I remember I used Neurons in a role where I was interim management for marketing, and I had a wonderful small team, and it was it had lots of collateral, frankly, because it was called Best Beginnings. There's no hiding from that. And Best Beginnings is a charity, wonderful charity, which is helping parents and parents to be with their NHS approved materials. But having said that, I suggested, let's just look at it and see if all the materials that we have, the banners and the apps and the playbooks and all the different things, if they actually really are suitable. And I think we were working on a campaign. And that's the other thing where we also said, okay, well, hang on, lots of different colors here and lots of different aspects, and what should we really actually focus on? And I guess even to that point, which asset is actually really relevant? And that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you. It was on my list, is, do you see a certain, difference, and if so, what difference in the marketing, in the range of marketing assets that content creators, and that's not just social, it can be print, it can be, video or billboards. Do you see a difference, and can you describe a difference that you've seen in your projects?
In the types of, you mean by the types of designs or kind of traditions, or
designs, and maybe where mistakes are the biggest mistakes?
Sure. Yeah, I think so. That's a very, very interesting but also broad question, because things are also moving so fast, right? And I think that when social media, really was ramping up, this is like, speaks my age, right? So I remember the day when social media was becoming a thing. But there was a time that there was a realization that, oh, people are just using their old TVCs, their TV commercials, and just smacking them into Facebook and expecting them to do the same job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was a realization that there's a format difference, there's a context or there's a platform difference, and we can't just use that 60 seconds commercial and expect that that works in a Facebook feed. It failed miserably. It didn't get any views whatsoever. The same thing about YouTube videos. The 99% of the time that people are exposed to an ad, a kind of pre-roll ad on YouTube, they're looking down at the skip button. So it's like if you're just taking your ad that works well on TV commercials and put it into YouTube, it's going to fail miserably. So I think that the first thing that we realized was that it's a different game. It's a whole different thing. We need to think about this differently. That led to, first of all, we need to try to optimize for the platform.
Mm-hmm.
We need to understand how many differences are there. Do we need to have one particular look and feel for Instagram, one for Facebook, and then as we've gone along, there's been more platforms as well. So that means that the first level was just to understand the profiling of each of the platforms.
Yeah.
The second, and this is just social media alone. You talk about banner ads, and we also talk about banners on outdoor banners, but also digital banners. We can talk about radio ads. We can talk about also just product placement, for example. There's tons of different formats that are, on the one side, we needed to kind of understand how this works individually.
Yeah.
Then we needed to figure out how can we build a campaign. Where should I put my assets? And even today, we talk to marketeers and brand managers that say, I'm just throwing stuff out and see what sticks, right? I'm doing my A/B testing. It's just a massive testing effort that goes out. It's more if I can just play A/B or ABC testing and then figure out how it works and then sort out how it works, that's the current status. We also kind of had to explore, how does the order effect, if you go to physical media first or digital media first and then to physical, what is the order effect? For example, if we have a campaign where we first go on Facebook and then make sure people have this direct as part of their mail or something like that, there's order effects to this as well. So I think that what has happened since we've seen this realization or this awareness is that people understand now that it's a really complex beast. That's the first one. But there's an emerging realization that we can also measure this, and we can understand it, and we can tackle it, and we can handle it. One thing I hope we can see very soon is that people, kind of brand managers, business owners, for example, also realize that there's a cost associated with testing out in the field.
Yeah.
I think that if you think that we're just throwing out and seeing what sticks, if you just think of that as a kind of a lab exercise that has no cost, you're making a huge mistake, because what you're doing is that you're exposing a lot of your consumers to different types of contents that may or may not work well. It might dilute your messaging, it might disturb them, it might confuse them, it might annoy them, and there's a potential cost to that. So I think that there's a realization of, just as we have almost like a green energy mark as well, that maybe we should have an awareness of digital noise and digital pollution as well.
To be honest, that actually fits with quite a few things that come to my mind now that you're saying it. One is, I used to have marketing budgets back then, and I'm sure it's the same now, right? So, and I had to go under so many, I had so many cuts, as in marketing budget cuts. And it was exactly then. You usually have, like, your campaign is planned and everything's scheduled. And then you had a budget cut for one reason or the other, which is totally fine. And you then sometimes somehow limit the quality, and then you go down that route, which was, luckily I never had to do that, because I actually threw the whole plan. I threw the whole plan away. It's like, we just need to start from scratch. So now let's zero budgeting, right? So what is it we actually really need to do first, and then scrap all the brochures that we initially wanted to do, instead of doing bad brochures, right? So that's the thing. And I guess your explanation is also it's a brand effect, right? So you can really dilute or have a bad reputation
Yeah, it's not just about 0 to plus. It's actually the potential of going down as well. So that, and we know we've done several studies for Ericsson, for example, and Vodafone and Indosat, and for better understanding what the effect of mobile delays have. But mobile delays is just one instance of what we can call friction, right? So if you have an example would be if you go online and you go to an online store, and you put your purchases in the basket and you just want to check out. But for some reason, this kind of checkout process is really kind of, you have to set some extra check marks and becomes like a whole obstruction field, right? So then you're just basically going to leave it and go to some other place, right? So we try to test that effect and what is the tolerance for people to have that kind of friction experience. So what we did was to, on purpose, give people a normal, a slightly delayed, and a highly delayed experience on the phone. And the cover story was that this was a connection issue to Vodafone or some other provider. And we looked at, so we asked people, for example, to go on YouTube kind of channel, and then also to go on websites to find information that was also brand related. And what we found was that, first of all, people freaked out after 3 seconds here in Denmark. It was like, that was the 2 to 3 seconds. That was when people really had a stress response. In Germany, it was after 1 second, and in Indonesia, it was about 10 to 12 seconds. So it was kind of cultural differences.
Yeah.
The response was very comparable. So people had a very strong negative emotional response, very high stress response, actually comparable to watching a horror movie.
Wow.
And the effect on the brand was really strong. And that was not just kind of the service provider. If you were connected to that negative experience, people had a really kind of negative experience to your brand, or kind of a gut reaction to your brand afterwards. If you were the service provider, if you were the platform provider, if you were the phone provider, or if you were the brand for the video that people were exposed to. So regardless, if you have a bad experience, then that has a very negative kind of halo effect to the brand.
Yeah.
So to take that back to when we talk about this kind of trying a ton of stuff out, then if you, by trying stuff out in the field with A/B testing, are disturbing people or confusing people, you are actually risking having that negative effect, kind of the horror story effect, if you like. So I think that's something that we see a lot of companies becoming more and more aware of. And what we're trying to do is then to see other ways that we can help pre-test some of these things. Instead of just trying it out in the field on people, other ways that you can kind of front load some of these new technologies that are available.
And I guess that's I could share my screen, maybe, because I have the advantage, I know your tool and I have used it. People who don't know what you're talking about, how to predict this, maybe like, so what? I still have to test it, A/B. But yeah, that tool gives you those spots. And let me just actually, maybe that one image, right? So without actually sharing a detail, and should work.
Yeah.
So on your main website, it's a video. I'm not going to play it, but you can see those dots, and it's essentially, how would you describe it? Is it eye tracking?
Yeah, so we have, the company has operated for 10 years, and we've been really kind of focusing hard on doing very, the best in class measurements of attention, but also emotional and cognitive responses. So that means that we have tried to be the best we can to actually understand and measure how people respond to different assets, if that's an ad or a website or things like that. Over the years, we've accumulated a ton of data, and we keep on doing that. We keep on adding data to that database. But what we have done since 2018-19 is now to build an AI or different machine learning models that can now predict the same thing that we would otherwise have to measure. Yeah. So this means that with consumer neuroscience and neuromarketing, you would usually have to pay something like 20,000-30,000 euros. It will take you a few weeks before you get the results. And you would have to have a certain level of sophistication in your group to actually understand and turn this around into action. It's typically way too slow and costly for making small adjustments to ads. Yeah. But now that we have the AI, it's actually possible to upload the same image or a video. An image takes something like 10-12 seconds to analyze, and a video, depending on the length, but it typically takes like 5 minutes-ish to analyze a video. And you actually get the same results as if you were doing that expensive study. So that's kind of and it changes the game a lot. It means that you, as a designer or as a performance marketer, you can actually upload this material, and you can learn even before you start testing on people. Will it get attention? Will it engage people? Will people actually, are they likely to act on this, for example?
Yeah, and that's what we, in that project that I mentioned earlier, and that's exactly what we did. We uploaded a few videos before we released them, and our playbook and brochures, and we uploaded it, and then we got the results, and then we knew how to tweak it and where to tweak it and how to optimize it, actually change color, or change the corner of death, which is the lower right.
Lower right corner. All corners are actually bad, but it's the lower right corner is typically the worst, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And just as we've written up and down about the corner of death, but anyone listening here should not go back and put a brand in the bottom right corner, because there's only 4% will see that, and half of all ads have the brand in the bottom right corner. I think that if you go into anywhere, if that's social media or outdoor banners, just have a look at them and just make your own little pocket statistics. And about half of all ads will actually have the brand in the bottom right corner.
Gosh, how much? I mean, when you see that, that's obviously personal. Like, do you actually reach out or sometimes make a comment and say, "Did you know?" Or like, how much is it? It must be not painful, but it must be so like, oh gosh, tiring.
I used to do it in the beginning. I think that now it's more like if we are talking to clients that we just pre-test some of the materials. I'm not that much on client calls anymore. It's typically kind of for the larger clients, but I do bring it up every once in a while, and hopefully I can bring it here on to a larger audience as well.
Perfect. No, that's one takeaway exactly for those who are content creators or marketing, and there's so many content, which is wonderful, right? So with tools like Canva and things are so much easier. Still need a wonderful designer who's able to do that. So that doesn't.
It takes nothing away from. I think this is one of the things that probably the myths when we talk to creatives, and I think there's a kind of mental shift among designers and creators as well. Is that this kind of competing with us, taking away some of the design? It actually doesn't. It calibrates it. It helps actually to combine good design with performance as well, right? And I think that right now, until now, if you don't use it, yes, you can have a very compelling narrative, you can have very compelling and appealing design, but it's very likely that very often people will not remember what it was for, right? So that's part of the challenge, and we've seen that again and again, is that people remember and they love the ad, but they are clueless as to what the brand was.
That was, yeah, exactly. That's amazing. I'm going through our preparation call, and then also the list of questions that I had, and we spoke about there's so many companies out there, and let's just give forward or pay forward. One of the things that I'm always curious is the collaboration, how we collaborate with other companies. So is there, I guess, question for you, is there someone, be it a person or organization, that you haven't partnered or collaborated with and you really would like to? Is there someone on your vision list that comes up and you're like, if I had the choice and I could make a call, that would be really great?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think there's a ton of those. So purely commercially, I would definitely say that Adobe is one of the kind of the big companies I would love to work closely with, especially now that they made kind of the Firefly generative AI. One of the things for us is that generative AI it's become so easy to create content, right? Both copy but also visual kind of design. The problem with that is that my concern is that it's just going to exacerbate and kind of exaggerate the problems we already have. And I think that if we don't fix that, then that's going to just be even worse for the brands, as I just mentioned before. I think that we need to fix this. We need to fix that kind of digital noise or that commercial noise. And generative solutions don't necessarily fix that. But I think that what we have provided is like a good calibration point for these generative models. So definitely Adobe, also OpenAI, definitely, because I think that they are creating some amazing stuff, but I also think that they're lacking some of that predictive abilities that we have. So that would be definitely just purely selfish. That would be one of the things that I would love to do. Of course, I don't think we work with Amazon yet. That would be, of course, one of the things to obviously work with. I think we've been pretty much around. We've done so much crazy stuff through the years. It's like anything from marathon testing to you name it. And we've been very kind of fortunate in that sense to be able to test things that most companies would never be able to do. So I think that it's just a good combination of sheer luck and being at the right place at the right time, and also saying and doing the right things. Have been really important, I think.
Was there any project that comes to your mind, like which was so surprisingly, or so like, I don't know, was creating, well, I don't know, was special for you for one reason or the other that you remember?
Yeah, there's actually quite a lot, but I think that back in the days, I think some of the work we've done with those the innovation labs, they went on a huge kind of growth focused kind of program. So traditional big Fortune 50 company that it's a home improvement company, is like really boring usually, but they took the opportunity to try to challenge their model to say, is there a new technology we can try out? And we should actually try every single new technology out there. If it's virtual reality, augmented reality, if it's robots, having them in the store, if it's like using these kind of skeletons for helping people to lift better, if it's 3D printing, anything and everything, they tried that. And they used us as a calibration point, as a kind of a reality check for, instead of just listening to what people said, they also used us to say, are people confused? Are they engaged, for example? So some of the things that we've been able to do is actually to be a part of how Google crafted their augmented reality strategy by using some of the neuroscience feedback we had. I would never dream that would happen. And having some of the Google people come here to Denmark, in a small town here in Copenhagen, to eat burgers with us, that was I think that was the high point.
Oh, nice. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
What's on your list? Anything, I don't know, I guess projects or things planned that could be interesting to share? Is there anything on your list coming up?
I think so there's two different paths for me. One is for Neurons, which is a lot of focus is on building these new AI tools to kind of grow the opportunities we have. We are able to successfully predict attention now, but we also are able to predict emotional and cognitive responses very shortly. We have a beta version for that, which is insane to me. We actually have very promising results now that show that we can predict emotional and cognitive responses second by second. So it's basically the same as putting EEG on. So we're doubling down on that. That's really interesting. And if you look beyond that, we have like 3 steps for us in terms of our product. So one is making predictive AI. The second is what we call suggestive AI. So that's, you take the results and it's like, okay, what should I do? And then this suggestive AI will actually come up with recommendations for do's and don'ts. And of course, we are dabbling in the space of generative AI as well, to use the database we have to build suggestions. It's not kind of a fully fledged generative AI, but it's to build suggestions for you. So if you're sitting there and you have this design and it turns out it doesn't work as I was intending to do, then the generative AI would actually come up with suggestions for how you can make them, right?
Wow.
Based on that, are basically calibrated by the neuroscience data. So that's like one path for me. The second path for me is also to, we mentioned this in the pre-call, but it's one of the things is that I've actually, for a longer time than Neurons, I've been working very much in the space of management, leadership, innovation. So for me, it's like applying my neuroscience and psychology background to see how can we make people be better decision makers, if that's as a manager or a leader or an employee, or if you're a startup, then that's kind of a different path for me as well, to kind of see how can I utilize that knowledge and that, that approach that I have for Neurons in terms of management and leadership, for example.
Great. Best advice you've ever been given? Like, final questions from my side. Best advice you've ever been given?
I think the best advice is the things I've learned but not been told. So I think that if I'm saying it now, hopefully people can turn that into action. That would be reach out to people, don't and accept rejection, but just keep on going. I think that's the best thing I've been told. Just keep on going and just ask people.
Great. Yeah. Never be afraid of asking for help, right? So yeah, to be honest, and full disclosure to anyone here, we never met, right? So it was also one of those things I actually mentioned to Thomas, like I was happy when he accepted that invitation to come on this, because I usually do those interviews with people that I met before, and you're the first that I've never met really in person. And I know you from the course, but yeah, so thank you for making that time. And I think I've been told the stream works. I hope it does, because again, the other thing I was nervous today was the technology part, because I'm using a new software. But I've been told it's working. So I hope people can see it. If there's any questions from anyone, do I guess use the comments feature, and we can both read and pass them on. And yeah, I always try to, very Germanic, I know, but try to stick to 30 minutes, because I think everything beyond that is a bit tricky to arrange. So
I'm glad you say Germanic and not German, because Germanic is more, that includes Danish and Norwegian and Swedish as well, right?
Yeah, and to be honest, different topic, but yeah, exactly. So attention span was one question I wanted to ask, but I'll do that separate, maybe in my follow-up. But thank you, Thomas. It's really, so the chat works because someone's saying thank you, such an insightful interview. Thank you. So I can see that in that new Restream software, which I can recommend as well. So yeah, thank you for your time, Thomas, and all the best for your move. How's move packing up? You can let your dog back in.
Yeah, she will be happy with that.
She will be happy. And yeah, wonderful to have a chat, and I'm sure we speak again. And thanks everyone for joining, and speak soon.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.